They said her food tasted like magic. Every morning, crowds lined up for her jollof, pushing, begging, waiting just to get a single plate. But if the villagers knew what she added to that pot, even the bravest of them would have fled into the hills. Because behind the fragrant steam, behind the sweet aroma that drifted across the road like an invitation from the gods, lived a secret darker than night itself. This is the forbidden tale of Ikechi, the roadside vendor whose journey from poverty to wealth was sparked by desperation, guided by an unseen force, and ended in a storm of betrayal, confession, and death. Tonight, listen closely. For some roads lead to destiny, but others lead straight into the mouth of the spirit world. And when a human crosses that line, nothing ever returns the same. Now, let the story begin. Ikechi was born into hardship, raised by a mother who sold firewood, and a father whose life the spirits claimed too early. From childhood, she learned that survival was not a gift, it was a daily battle. When she became a young woman, she carried the same burden of poverty on her shoulders, but inside her heart lived a fierce determination. She wanted more. She wanted dignity. She wanted her life to mean something beyond suffering. So one dusty afternoon, after borrowing a little money from a neighbor, Ikechi bought a wooden table, a single giant pot, 4 mismatched plates, and a tiny bag of rice. With trembling hands and trembling hope, she set up her small table by the roadside where buses roared past, where dust rose like spirits dancing over the earth. She cooked jollof, white rice, beans, stew. She waited with a hopeful smile, expecting the world to notice her. But the world did not. People walked by as if she were invisible. Some sniffed the air and kept walking. Others didn't look her way at all. Days passed, each one heavier than the last. Ikechi watched her food grow cold, watched her dreams shrink, watched her courage fade like smoke in the wind. And deep inside her, a fear began to grow, a fear that perhaps the world had no space for her. But destiny was watching. The 3rd week broke her spirit. That morning, the sun rose harsh and merciless, burning the back of her neck as she stirred her pot. She had woken before dawn, hopeful again, whispering to her stew as if it could hear her. "Today will be different, please." But by midday, nothing changed. Only 2 customers came, and both complained about not having change. By evening, she sat beside her untouched food, tears threatening to fall. She was tired. She was ashamed. She felt like she had failed everyone, including herself. That night, she dragged her empty pot home, her footsteps heavy, her heart heavier. In the darkness of her small room, Ikechi broke down completely. She cried until the walls felt like they were crying with her. In her despair, she confided in her closest friend, Ngozi, a woman known for her sharp tongue, loud laughter, and strange knowledge of things better left unspoken. Ikechi told her everything, the failure, the loneliness, the thought that maybe she wasn't meant for anything good. Ngozi listened, nodding slowly. And then, with a seriousness Ikechi had never seen before, she whispered, "There is someone in the forest, deep inside, who can help you. A spiritualist. Powerful. Dangerous, but powerful." Ikechi's heart thumped. A forest? A spiritualist? Was that hope? Or a trap? Ikechi shook her head immediately. No, Ngozi. I can't go to the forest. Those places, they eat people." But Ngozi leaned closer, her voice dropping to a chilling hush. "You asked for help, didn't you? You asked for something to change. The woman in that forest, she changes destinies." Ikechi dismissed it at first. She spent the next day cooking, waiting, trying to believe she could survive without spiritual interference. But the world answered her desperation with silence. By evening, she sold only 1 small plate of rice. 1. That night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning, her soul trembling. Poverty is a powerful whisperer, and that whisper was growing louder. Finally, she picked up her phone, her voice weak and defeated. "Ngozi, I'm ready. By dawn the next morning, she followed her friend toward the edge of the village, where the trees grew thick, ancient, whispering with voices older than memory. The path into the forest felt wrong, too cold, too dark, as though the sun refused to follow them inside. Ngozi pointed the way, but refused to go farther. "If you want your life to change, you must walk the last part alone." Ikechi swallowed her fear, stepped forward, and the forest closed behind her like a mouth swallowing its prey. The deeper Ikechi walked, the stranger the world became. Shadows moved where no wind blew, unseen eyes followed her, and the trees seemed to bend inward, listening. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but something kept pushing her forward: desperation, hunger, destiny. Finally, she reached a clearing where a tiny hut sat crookedly, smoke curling from its roof like the breath of a sleeping beast. At the door sat an old woman, her skin wrinkled like dried leaves, her hair white as moonlight, her eyes too bright to be human. The woman smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Ikechi, I have been expecting you." Ikechi froze. She hadn't spoken her name. Her fear curled like a cold hand around her throat. How did you?" The old woman raised a finger. "Hush. Desperation brings all humans to my door. And yours stinks stronger than most." Ikechi wanted to run. She wanted to scream. But her legs felt nailed to the earth. The spiritualist ushered her inside with a gesture. The hut smelled of herbs, smoke, and something she couldn't identify. Something metallic. Something wrong. "Drink," the old woman commanded, handing her a dark calabash. Ikechi hesitated. "Drink, if you want the crowds to find you." Slowly, trembling, she lifted the calabash to her lips. The liquid was bitter, so bitter it felt like swallowing broken night. Ikechi gagged, almost dropping the calabash, but the old woman's eyes held her in place like invisible chains. When she finished, the spiritualist nodded, satisfied. "Good. Now listen carefully." She leaned forward, her voice low and ancient. "If you want your pot to call people, to summon them, to bind them to your food, you must give it a part of yourself." Ikechi blinked. "Part of myself?" The woman's smile widened unnaturally. "Yes. Every morning, before you cook, you must urinate inside the pot. Only then will the spirit stir the craving inside whoever eats from it." Ikechi's stomach twisted. That's disgusting. I can't." "You came here for help," the woman snapped. "And help has a price. Do it, or leave with your poverty." Her words hit Ikechi like a slap. Poverty or ritual. Suffering or success. Hunger or hope. Slowly, brokenly, she nodded. "I will do it." The old woman touched her forehead with a cold hand. "Then go. Tomorrow, your life will change." Ikechi stumbled out of the hut, shaking, uncertain, afraid. But somewhere in her heart, a dangerous seed had been planted. A seed that would soon grow into madness, wealth, betrayal, and death. Ikechi barely slept. Her mind spun like a pot left boiling without a lid, spilling fear, shame, and a strange flicker of hope she couldn't understand. At dawn, she lay staring at her pot, the same pot that had once held ordinary rice and ordinary dreams. But today, it demanded something different. Something forbidden. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid. "This is madness," she whispered to the empty room. But poverty speaks louder than reason. And hope, even twisted hope, can make a desperate soul obey. With her heart pounding painfully, Ikechi did what the spiritualist instructed. Shame washed over her, guilt clung to her skin, but she didn't stop. When she finished, she washed her hands over and over until her fingers hurt, trying to scrub the memory from her mind. Then she cooked. The aroma of her jollof rose into the air, thick, sweet, almost unnaturally inviting. She felt a strange heaviness in the room, like invisible eyes watching her stir the pot. When she finally carried her food to the roadside, she expected nothing. No miracle. No sudden change. So when the first man stopped, sniffed the air, and asked for a plate, Her heart almost stopped. When 5 more came, then 10, then 20. Ikechi stood frozen. People shoved to get closer. Some ran home to fetch plates. Others sat on the floor to wait their turn. She watched the crowd in disbelief. The ritual had worked. Within 1 week, Ikechi transformed from that girl nobody noticed to the woman whose food controlled the whole village. Every morning, before the sun even rose, customers gathered by her table. They waited in lines so long that passing travelers stopped to ask, "What's happening there?" Her name spread like wildfire, from the market women, to the bus drivers, to the elders who barely left their compounds. People said her jollof tasted like it was touched by the gods. Some said it cured their headaches. Others said it brought good luck. The village children ran around chanting songs about Ikechi rice. Money poured in, more than she ever imagined possible. She bought bigger pots, new plates, nicer clothes. Her face glowed with pride and prosperity. But hidden beneath her smile was a growing darkness. Each morning, she performed the ritual, quickly, secretly, always at dawn. And each day, something inside her felt heavier. Was it guilt? Fear? Or the spirits watching her like hungry shadows? Ngozi, her friend, the one who told her about the spiritualist, also watched. At first with excitement. Then with confusion. Then with envy so sharp it could cut the sky. The richer Ikechi became, the narrower Ngozi's eyes grew. Jealousy had begun its slow, poisonous crawl. At first, Ngozi was happy for Ikechi. Or at least, she pretended to be. She would stop by her stand, smiling too widely, laughing too loudly, touching Ikechi's new apron with false admiration. But her eyes, those eyes, held something darker. Soon neighbors began whispering. How did Ikechi's business blow like this suddenly? Something is not right. No food tastes that good without something behind it. It must be juju. But the villagers kept eating anyway. Because addiction, even food addiction, is stronger than fear. Ngozi's jealousy grew with each passing day. She watched Ikechi buy new wrappers, cook with fresh ingredients, hire 2 young boys to help her serve the endless crowd. She watched her rise, and with every step Ikechi climbed, Ngozi descended deeper into resentment. Finally, one late evening, Ngozi's suspicion turned into determination. She pulled 2 men aside, her voice low and sharp. I want to know what she's mixing with that food, she said. Something is not normal. The men exchanged glances. Why do you care? Ngozi's lips tightened. Because I know her. I know when something smells off. She pretended it was concern. But deep inside her heart, the truth was simple. She wanted Ikechi's secret. Or she wanted Ikechi ruined. Either way, the fire of betrayal had been lit. The morning Ikechi's downfall began, the sky felt unusually still. There was no wind, no birds singing, just an eerie silence hanging over the village like a warning. Ikechi prepared for another busy day. She entered her cooking shed alone, ready to perform her ritual quickly before the helpers arrived. She didn't know that Ngozi, with 3 other villagers, had been watching her since before sunrise. They hid behind a fenced corner, crouched low, silent as snakes waiting to strike. Their eyes followed Ikechi's every movement. Ikechi lifted the lid of her pot. Breath trembling, she performed the ritual. It was quick, mechanical, routine. But as she lowered the lid again, she sensed something strange, a chill crawling across her skin. She turned sharply, scanning the yard. Nothing. Silence. Meanwhile, Ngozi covered her mouth with both hands, eyes wide with shock and triumph. So it's true, she whispered. So this is how she fooled everyone. The villagers beside her exchanged horrified looks. We must expose her, one murmured. Ngozi nodded, her voice almost trembling with mixed triumph and disgust. Today, before she sells that food to innocent people again. And so, the trap was set. The crowd would gather soon, but this time, not to buy food. This time, they would come for something else. Justice. Revenge. Or blood. When the sun finally rose, Ikechi placed her food on her roadside table, unaware that the ground beneath her feet was already shaking with danger. As always, customers appeared from every corner of the village. Some ran, eager to be first. Others carried their own plates, their smiles wide with anticipation. But before Ikechi could serve the first plate, a shout pierced the air. "Stop!" Everyone turned sharply. Ngozi marched forward, her face twisted with righteous fury. Behind her came 5 men, 3 women, and a crowd of curious villagers gathering like thunderclouds. Ikechi's chest tightened. "Ngozi, what is this?" Ngozi pointed at her with shaking hands. "Tell them what you do. Tell them what you put inside that pot every morning." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "What is she saying? What's inside the pot? What did Ikechi do?" Ngozi didn't wait. She lunged forward, lifted the pot lid, and screamed loud enough for the ancestors to hear. "She urinates inside it. Every morning. That's her secret." Gasps exploded across the road. Some villagers spat on the ground. Others staggered back in shock. A few dropped their plates. Ikechi's knees buckled. "No, please, let me explain." But the crowd had already turned. Their shock was transforming, shifting, boiling into anger. And for the first time since her rise to glory, Ikechi felt real fear, not from spirits, but from human beings. The road trembled with murmurs, each whisper feeding the next like dry grass feeding a wildfire. Ikechi raised her hands, shaking, eyes wide with desperation. "Please, please, it's not what you think." But crowds don't listen when fury begins to boil. One man stepped forward, his voice loud and sharp. "So we have been eating filth? You made fools of us? You bewitched us with your... He couldn't finish the sentence. His disgust swallowed the rest. Another woman shouted. "We trusted you, Ikechi. Our children ate your food." A young boy began to cry, wiping his mouth violently as though he could erase the memory. Ikechi stumbled backward as the crowd pressed closer. The air felt too tight, too hot, filled with the bitterness of betrayal. "I only wanted to succeed," she whispered. But the whispers were drowned by shouting. Ngozi stood proudly at the front, feeding the storm she created. "Ask her how she became wealthy so fast. Ask her how her food tied your stomachs. Ask her what she added to it." Hands pointed. Mouths cursed. Faces twisted with disgust. Someone threw the first stone. A small one, but it struck Ikechi's arm. She gasped. Another stone followed, bigger, sharper. Then another. And another. The crowd had begun its descent into rage, and no one cared that Ikechi was shaking, crying, begging for breath. For in that moment, she was no longer human in their eyes. She was a monster who fed on shame and deceit. The stones grew heavier. The shouts grew louder. The world spun wildly around Ikechi as she dropped to her knees, shielding her face with trembling arms. Blood trickled down her forehead, her vision blurred, the dust rising around her like a cruel veil. "Stop! Please!" she cried. But her voice drowned in their rage. 2 men grabbed her arms, dragging her toward the center of the crowd. "Confess!" someone shouted. "Tell us who taught you this. Tell us why you cursed our stomachs." Ikechi sobbed, barely able to breathe. "I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to." But the beating didn't stop. A woman slapped her. "Then why did you?" Ikechi's voice cracked open like a broken pot. Because Ngozi told me about the spiritualist. She took me there. She knew everything. I didn't even want to go." The crowd froze. All eyes snapped toward Ngozi. Ngozi blinked, shocked, furious, terrified. "She's lying!" she screamed. "I only told her stories. I didn't know she would actually go." But the villagers weren't convinced. They had seen the triumph in Ngozi's eyes earlier, the satisfaction, the hunger to expose Ikechi. Whispers rose again. Why would she know the spiritualist's location? Why didn't she warn us earlier? Why is she shouting so much? Ngozi stumbled backward, face pale. The same anger that consumed Ikechi was now turning toward her. The villagers' anger shifted like a sudden windstorm, fierce, merciless, unstoppable. Ngozi's chest rose and fell rapidly as she looked around, realizing she was now surrounded. Wait, listen, she pleaded, backing away. I only wanted to help. I wanted to expose the evil she was doing. But resentment is a hungry beast, and the villagers were starving. You are the root, one man shouted. You led her there, another accused. You brought corruption into this village. Ngozi shook violently. No, I only told her stories. I didn't think. You didn't think? An elder repeated. Yet you knew the way to the forest? You knew the spiritualist's name? You pushed her there with your own words. Ngozi tried to run. She didn't make it far. 5 men grabbed her, dragging her to the ground. Dust and screams tore through the air. Please! Please! I didn't do anything, she cried. But no one listened. Her voice now sounded exactly like Ikechi's moments earlier, desperate, hopeless, swallowed by the storm. As they beat her, Ikechi crawled away slowly, gasping, watching through blurred eyes. And in that single moment, she realized something terrible. Betrayal is a two-edged sword. The hand that wields it is rarely spared. The villagers struck Ngozi again and again, driven not just by anger, but by the shame that they had been fooled. They wanted blood. And they took it. By the time the villagers returned their fury to Ikechi, she was too weak to stand. Her body felt like broken clay, her breath shallow, her vision flickering like a dying flame. Ngozi's screams had faded into silence behind the crowd, leaving only the echoes of violence in the air. 2 elderly women approached Ikechi, not with sympathy, but with cold judgment. You bewitched our children, one spat. You fed us filth, the other growled. Ikechi shook her head weakly. I didn't want to. I swear. I was desperate. I just wanted to survive. But desperation was no excuse to them. Not after what they witnessed. The crowd encircled her again, tighter this time. Someone kicked her in the stomach. Another threw a stick. A young man struck her with the flat side of a hoe, sending her rolling onto her side. She coughed violently, blood staining the ground. Her heart felt heavy, not just from pain, but from regret so deep it tore through her soul. I'm sorry, she whispered. I just wanted a better life. But nobody stopped. The villagers continued until her cries faded, until her breathing slowed, until her body lay still, like a forgotten shadow on the ground. Only then did they step back. And in that grim silence, the village realized what they had done. They had taken 2 lives, not because they sought justice, but because they sought someone to blame. The morning sun rose higher, spreading light across a scene of dust, blood, and broken spirits. The villagers stood frozen, panting, sweating, staring at the lifeless forms of Ikechi and Ngozi. No one felt victorious anymore. Anger had cooled, leaving only confusion and a deep, unsettling dread. Whispers trembled through the air. Did we do the right thing? What if we acted too fast? We should have taken them to the chief. But guilt, the silent judge, had already begun its work. Some covered their faces in shame. Others walked away quietly, avoiding each other's eyes. And the rest simply stared at the 2 bodies, afraid to move, afraid to speak, afraid to face what they had become. An elder finally broke the silence. Take them away, he said, voice strained. Let the ground swallow this shame. 2 men lifted Ikechi's fragile body. 2 others carried Ngozi. They took them to the edge of the village, not for burial with honor, but to leave them there, where the forest shadows could claim what the village no longer wanted. As they laid the women down, a sharp wind swept through the trees, cold, warning, restless. It was as though the spirits themselves had witnessed everything, and were not pleased. That night, The village slept uneasily. Dogs barked at nothing. Wind howled without cause. Shadows moved in places where shadows should not be. The forest had opened a door. And doors to the spirit world do not close easily. Deep within the forest, far from the village, the spiritualist sat in her crooked hut, grinding herbs with slow, deliberate movements. Her ancient eyes suddenly snapped open. The wind outside shifted. The spirits murmured. The balance of things had changed. She rose, stiff but steady, and stepped outside. Her gaze drifted toward the village, toward the restless air. So, she whispered, they could not handle the gift. She walked into the forest's heart, staff tapping against the earth. Leaves rustled without wind. Shadows crawled behind her like loyal servants. When she reached the clearing where bodies lay, she stood over Ikechi and Gozi in silence. You both asked for what you did not understand, she said softly. You tasted power, and you fed your greed. But you were not the only guilty ones. She raised her staff. The ground trembled. The spirits of the forest swirled like dark mist around her. Let the village remember this day, she commanded, her voice becoming more than human. For their rage, their judgment, their violence, will not go unanswered. The wind howled, louder, louder, until it whipped through the trees like a storm of invisible claws. And far back in the village, people woke abruptly, clutching their chests, trembling under a fear they could not name. For the spirits had begun to move. And when spirits move, they demand balance. Balance in blood. Balance in truth. And balance in justice. The morning after Ikechi and Ebel's deaths arrived with a heavy, unnatural silence, the kind that settles on a village only when the ancestors are displeased. The cock crowed, yes, but even the sound felt frightened, cut short, trembling. Women peeked out from their doors. Men sat at the edges of their beds. Children stopped midway through tying their wrappers. No one wanted to speak first, because the weight of what happened the previous evening still sat like a stone on every chest. 2 bodies had been carried home, one from desperation, one from envy, and though the villagers claimed they acted out of anger, deep inside they carried something colder than regret, fear. Fear of what the witch in the forest would do. Fear of the curse that follows unjust bloodshed. Fear of the ancestors' judgment. Elder Ikechi walked through the square with slow steps, his staff trembling in his hand. We have opened a door we cannot easily close, he muttered. We punish sin with greater sin. And now, something will answer us. Mothers whispered to one another. What if the witch comes for her revenge? Farmers whispered. What if the spirits begin to feed on our crops? Even children, though innocent, felt the tension, and stayed close to the corners of their homes, sensing the invisible shadows creeping around the village. But the worst sign came from the sky. No wind. No movement. Just a thick, suffocating stillness, as if the air itself refused to breathe over a place now tainted by violence. And while the villagers gathered to argue, regret, and blame one another, deep inside the forest, the witch who gave Ikechi the charm felt the deaths ripple through the soil like a drumbeat. She lifted her head, sniffed the air, and whispered, It has begun. The village had blood on its hands, and the consequences were already waking. Far inside the evil forest, the witch's hut glowed with an eerie green flame. Her pot boiled without fire, stirred by unseen hands. She looked into its depths, saw the moment Ikechi drank the charm, saw the desperation in her eyes, saw the villagers beating her and Ebel until silence swallowed both hearts. The witch spat into the soil, an act of disgust and warning. You take what is mine, then destroy those I bind, she hissed. You think death frees you from a covenant? Outside her hut, shadows began to dance, spirits shaped like smoke and bone. They circled her pot, whispering names. Ikechi, Ebel, Amanwani village. The witch raised her crooked staff and struck the ground once. Boom! The earth trembled. Leaves cracked. Birds scattered. Back in the village, at that very moment, something strange happened. The water in clay pots turned sour. Smoke refused to rise from cooking fires. A pot of gari soaking on someone's table suddenly smelled rotten. Villagers panicked. Ha! What abomination is this? My stew was fresh a moment ago. Even cold water tastes bitter. Elder Ikechi gathered the people, trying to calm them. The spirits are angry. We must cleanse the land. But the signs only worsened. A baby refused to breastfeed, crying as if tasting bitterness from the air itself. A goat vomited frothy saliva. And the wind that finally blew that afternoon carried a strange smell, sharp, acidic, hauntingly familiar. A young boy sniffed the air and gagged. Mama, it smells like something spoiled. But the elders recognized it instantly. It was the same sourness that rose from Ikechi's pot, the same bitter scent that revealed the abomination the day before. The curse had begun its slow march. And the village had only seen its first warning. By the next morning, Amanwaniai village had woken to a strange, suffocating heaviness in the air. Smoke from cooking fires curled lazily but refused to rise, settling instead in thick gray clouds. Pots of rice, beans, and stews that had been perfectly fine yesterday now smelled sour, stale, bitter, and foul. Mothers cried as their children refused to eat. Farmers cursed as the water from the river they fetched tasted bitter and metallic. The entire village felt wrong, as if life itself had turned against them. Elder Ikechi convened the council of elders. The spirits are displeased, he said gravely. The blood spilled yesterday has not been forgiven. We punished the guilty, and in doing so, punished ourselves. The balance is broken. He instructed villagers to light fires at the four corners of the village, pour libations, and pray to their ancestors for mercy. But as incense smoke rose, it twisted unnaturally, black and sharp, slicing through the air with an almost audible hiss. A young girl screamed when she touched her clay pot. Its contents had curdled instantly. Dogs howled as if the night itself were calling them to war. Even the wind carried the bitter memory of betrayal and desperation. The witch's curse was subtle yet relentless, touching everything the village relied on. It reminded them that greed, envy, and human cruelty have consequences that no fire, prayer, or ritual could immediately erase. Amanwaniai village had learned a terrifying truth: some actions, and some betrayals, echo far beyond the moment of their commission. Days passed, and the bitterness in food and water did not fade. Children became restless, adults became cautious, afraid to speak too loudly or step too far from the village center. No one dared touch the cooking pots without first offering prayers to the spirits. Even then, only a few dared taste what they had prepared. The elders held a meeting. The witch is powerful, Elder Ikechi warned. She blessed Ikechi, and we destroyed her without understanding. The price is now ours to pay. Fear swept through the villagers like wildfire. Farmers noticed their crops beginning to wilt. Cattle grew listless. Chickens stopped laying eggs. People whispered in corners, blaming each other for the calamity, but all knew the root of it: their own violent hands, and the secret that Ikechi had been forced to follow. At night, some villagers reported hearing whispers in the wind, calling names. Ikechi! Ebel! Amanwaniai! The same voices that had guided jealousy, desperation, and betrayal now haunted the living, reminding them that the spirits of the forest never forget. It became a rule of life: never act out of envy, never force others into sin, never betray the trust of friends, for even when humans die, their choices remain alive through the spirits they touched. Amanwaniai had learned its lesson, but the echoes of shame and fear lingered, as bitter and persistent as the cursed food. Nightfall in Amanwaniai became a time of fear rather than rest. The villagers reported hearing strange sounds from the forest: leaves rustling without wind, branches snapping though no animal passed, and distant voices whispering secrets no human should know. They said the forest was alive with the spirits of Ikechi and Ebel, and even the elders were too afraid to enter the shadows after sunset. The cursed pots in every household had become a reminder of the past. No meal was cooked without careful ritual. Even those who had once mocked Ikechi's small roadside table now bowed to the memory of her power, the power they had destroyed. Some children claimed to see two figures wandering at the forest edge, one crying, one accusing, silhouettes tangled in shadows, repeating arguments the villagers had never heard. People who saw them said their eyes burned like coals, filled with the sorrow of desperation and the sting of betrayal. Elder Ikechi shook his head during a council meeting. The forest remembers. And the witch watches. Those who acted in anger without understanding the cost will never be free of these lessons. Even after years, the whispering continued. Travelers avoided Amanwania at night, saying that if you pass the village after dark, you can hear faint cries carried by the wind, warnings to all who might repeat the mistakes of the living. Time passed, but the story of Ikechi and Ebel became legend. Parents told their children, "Do not envy. Do not betray. Do not let desperation lead you into darkness." The villagers honored the memory of what happened, rebuilding their lives slowly, cautiously, and with constant reverence for the unseen world. They rebuilt their homes, cleared their fields, and planted their crops with prayer. They cooked food only after blessing it with incense, water, and whispered apologies for the blood spilled. Yet the memory of Ikechi's pot, its strange allure, its dangerous power, never left them. Visitors who entered the village felt an eerie heaviness, a sense of eyes watching, of consequences lingering on every breath. And the forest, dark and silent, waited patiently, reminding all who dared approach, the line between desperation and wickedness, envy and cruelty, is thin. The story of Ikechi and her friend lives on, not as a tale of magic alone, but as a moral. Human greed and betrayal awaken forces that do not forgive. The dead may rest, but their choices, and the curses they carry, echo through the living. Amanwania village became a cautionary tale whispered across generations. And its warning remains simple yet chilling. Beware desperation. Beware envy. And never betray a friend, for the consequences may last far longer than life itself. Thank you for listening to this dark African folktale. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Tell us which lesson struck you most. Was it desperation, envy, or betrayal? Your support keeps these stories alive and allows us to share more mysterious tales from our villages. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and remember, some secrets should never be uncovered.